He's been brought in as a consultant to Harlequin's first team. He has worked with the Royal Ballet School. Ben will go into it. He's quite a modest guy, so maybe won't talk about it too much. But I just wanted to explain the caliber of coach that Ben is, and what I've been learning from him personally, just training with him, has been massively beneficial. And the goal of this webinar today is really to understand how to utilize SGPT into our gyms to really have a second tier and so that we can have that increase in value per member. And like we spoke about on last week's call, a lot of us don't have that. So hopefully you're going to find this extremely beneficial. I'm going to pass over to Ben to introduce himself and talk about his story. And yeah, without further ado, Ben.
That's an amazing intro. Thank you very much. What a what a great entrance to me. I think the best way to start us off is probably to tell the flow of the story of the creation of my gym, and then to structure it in a way that will kind of make sense in terms of as a storytelling profile, so that you guys can understand what I implemented, why I implemented it, and why it was hugely successful. I think the big things for gym owners is a lot of the stuff which you're going to hear me mentioning a lot today about is a lot about lateral thinking and about providing a better service. It really kind of coincides a lot with my belief also about really helping people to progress and finding ways to educate them on multiple different levels. And can we deliver an even better service? So I'm consistently asking these questions to myself, to my team, and I'm consistently thinking of ways to implement in structures that not only bring more revenue to the gym, but also bring a better state of coaching and coaching ability to our clients. And hopefully it's something you're able to follow in the structure. So I'm going to jump in, a little bit of story time. So let me know if this resonates with you at any point. Feel free to send some thumbs up emojis along the way or anything onto the screen. So I've been a coach now for coming up to 12 years, which is a long time to be in this industry. And I absolutely adore it. I think I entered into the industry wanting to be at a very high level very quickly, arguably impatiently. And I really struggled with the entrance into this as a career because for me, as I'm sure most of you will agree, the PT standardized learning is trash. It's just awful. It's just like GCSE understanding, and it's incredibly dated. And I wanted to fast track that as quickly as I could. So when I went for my first job interview, I said to them I wanted to be their head coach with no experience and with no essential training behind me. And so in order for me to do that, I had to come up with a thesis. At the time, it was a body transformation student. I came to them with an idea, and they said if I could prove that it worked on a bunch of their clients, then they would make me their head coach within a month to 2 months. So I had that initial drive and bite to see if I could really get this idea of work, this body of work that I had created to actually work. And very fortunately, they backed it and they said, if you can do it, we'll follow it through. And I was very fortunate in the fact that it did work. And I was then able to massively include other coaches into that through them. So Number One Fitness was a great education system for me because I was able to fail and learn really fast. Now, I didn't have very much money when I first started out, and I really couldn't afford to go on any of the courses that I wanted or even meet the people who I massively respected. I was also very time poor as well, running a gym and also doing some acting on the side. And I realized that really early on that I was going to have to come up with a way to get in touch with these people in order to get the knowledge that I wanted. So I started calling people up and I started asking if I could take them for lunch and ask them for just 3 golden nuggets, just essentially 3 things that they could tell me that was going to dramatically improve me as a coach. And got a lot of no's at the start, got a lot of no's. But eventually I got my first yes, and it was with a really reputable surgeon who was talking a lot about fascia and talking a lot about the changes that he was experiencing when talking to athletes about incorporating fascial training into their work modules and their cycles of training. And I was fascinated by it because it's really wasn't anything I really ever understood, this idea of explosive, plyometric, and rewiring and helping people with injuries just by getting them to move more. And he very kindly took me, I took him, but he paid for it, for lunch. And off the back end of that, I asked him if I could then also follow him for 30 days. And he very kindly said yes. And I basically was a fly on the wall to some of the most amazing talks with doctors, coaches, Olympic athletes, all sorts. And off the back end of that was then able to then catapult myself into other meetings. And I guess to say the rest is history. I really started to build a body of work and a toolbox that I felt really was pushing me to be the kind of coach I wanted to be. Because I could see that there was this huge gap in the market for understanding how people moved. I kind of was seeing a lot of the one shoe fits all type mentality. And I was seeing that some of my coaching styles were failing people because they couldn't get their head around the psychology around food. They couldn't get their head around the psychology of range of motion. And I was like, I don't have the resources to help them to do that. And I was frustrating because I could see what I thought the issues were, but I wasn't able to grasp at the start of my career was what was actually necessary. Fast tracked on, and I'd worked with some incredible people and been to some amazing facilities, places, teams, schools, and the knowledge that I had accumulated over a very short period of time meant that I had an idea that had started to spring to mind about how to change coaching for the better and the betterment of people. So I started to create my own methodology, and it was something that really worked. It was something that was really starting to kick off and was really starting to come together. And I started coaching it to my coaches and helping them understand how we can discover better range, better understanding of people's movement. And just by, I mean, it's a little bit of a bastardization of the Alexander technique, followed by an industry of movement understanding. Also utilizing things of understanding of Kinstretch, which if some of you know is a little bit to do with ligament understanding as well. And then also going a little bit further and deeper with fascial training, as well as also bodybuilding. And it's all of that stuff sprung together to make me, a better coach to help somebody and program for them in whatever position they're in. And I think that I always talk about this to coaches, which is you might have a phenomenal way of getting through to certain people given certain modalities, but do you have the skills or the ability to help somebody when they are injured, to help somebody when they are in a position of pain, or in a completely flip side of that, can you find a way to program into the things that this person wants, which aren't just based on power or sporting achievement? Can you go into the aesthetics? Can you understand that? Because arguably there's great programs online for power training, Olympic lifting, CrossFit. There's all of this modalities we can follow, and there's lots of really good ones out there. But are you able to take somebody, for example, who's 6 foot something and somebody who's 5'2", and can you address the changes in their anatomy and help them to both get into the state of performing to a very high level, or do you just expect them to be able to do the movement? And so with that then comes an idea of, okay, we've got to go back to the fundamentals of movement. We've got to go back to the fundamentals of range of motion, of pressure, of rotation. And that's where I then started coming up with this idea of this 4-quadrant style training. So if you can imagine it, you've got unloaded movement training and you've got unloaded linear training. I'll explain what these are in a second, just so that it's not just like, what's he talking about? And we've got loaded linear training, and then we've got loaded movement training. Most people who you meet always work the top 2 quadrants of unloaded linear training. That's our body weight style movements. That's our push-ups. That's our pull-ups. That's our body weight squats, all that type of thing. And then we've got loaded linear training. That is at its core, that's the fundamentals of probably strength and conditioning as a whole. Okay. The things that usually people miss out on are things like movement and being able to use unloaded movement training. For me, that is pretty much how I structure all of people's warm-ups. to better the ligaments, to better the range of motion, and to help people understand how to move better, feel better, and create a much greater yield. Let me speak up.
No, I wanted to ask a question on that.
Sure.
So I just wanted to ask you guys, is use movement training, and by movement training we mean rotational training in your programming, like, because CrossFit is predominantly linear, right? Like, we've got a lot of CrossFit gym owners here, and we've got a lot of box owners, even whether it's like that bigger group model. Just throw in the chat how many of you actually use rotational movement in your training as a modality and think about programming that in.
Yeah, I'd be super interested, especially because you guys follow sometimes quite a strict regime, but it still follows an idea of randomization. And that in itself can be quite detrimental to some people's range, because they're forcing themselves into a random setting rather than something that's planned. Obviously, not all of you coaches do that. And I understand, after actually meeting some of you, I understand that some of you follow periodization training and also have a structure to your training as well. So I'd be super interested to hear if anyone actually uses any type of mobilizing work or mobilization before even training. And I don't just mean, doing the movement first.
Okay, let's flip the question, because we've not got anyone entering the chat. Who only mainly uses linear training? Put a 1 in the chat if that's your gym programming right now. What does your current programming look like? Because when we understand this, which Ben's going to go into explaining how this methodology works, it really does give a new level to unlock with your training programming. But also, it doesn't mean you have to change anything in your existing programming. It means you can elevate your existing members to a higher standard without going in and fully upheaving everything.
Also keeps them injury free. If you start to understand the key of the fundamentals of this stuff, it opens up a whole avenue for recovery. And it also helps you to understand if someone does have a shift or they have a side that's unequal. One which I always like to kind of get people to think about is, if your hips are moving differently, let's say these are your 2 iliac crests, and you notice that someone has a lot more pivotal or movement or range on one side, and one side is barely moving at all. How do we fix that? What does that limitation mean for us? And it might mean that someone's squat literally looks like a salsa shift to the left and nothing on the right, or when they're pressing, you kind of see their hips doing this on the way up. Is that important? Does that matter that we fix that? Yes, of course, because that means that their lower back's doing this horrible shift from side to side. And it's not a question of if they're going to get injured, it's a question of when, because what you're creating is consistent fatigue, and what the body is used to is that flick state when it thinks it's going to get injured, which actually is usually where we get even worse injured. So if you're consistently moving into a ligament line rather than one of a strength into a muscle line,
Jenna understands movement.
that's all.
When she Charlie said we use rotation across is too linear, and Ryan said not loads, but we do use it as we were across very linear, usually in warm-ups or accessories. So one of the big things that better at movement training, not using it as a walk, using it as a modality to work on, to improve the health of the athlete and to work.
Sorry, Lewis, I don't know whether it's just me, but I can't hear your sounds in and out, and we can't hear anything you're saying, lovely.
Hang on, try this. What can you hear?
Sorry.
Can you hear now?
You're a bit like a robot. It's like in and out, in and out. So we're missing half of what you're both saying.
Right. Let me just correct that. Okay, how about now?
That sounds solid now, I
Yeah,
think.
can everyone hear us?
Can you hear me as well?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
We might-
Okay.
Might just have to do that.
Sorry, I feel right rude
No,
cutting you off,
please.
but I was like, wait,
Otherwise
I'm
you would
missing
Otherwise,
it.
I would have just kept speaking on my Todd, which is not going to particularly help you guys at all. Okay, so imperative to help you guys sort of understand a little bit about what LMT is, loaded movement training. So it gets a bad rap because people think that, sadly, a lot of the people who do it think it's the only modality of training that you should do because there's so much good stuff that comes with it. I don't think that's right. It's very, very difficult to progressively overload loaded movement training. But if we were to look at the year of training for yourselves or your athletes, there can be these beautiful sections where we're thinking about creating adequate pressure in rotation with load. We're thinking about the full extension and compression throughout the whole of the body, rather than just a single section on its own. So what we often find as well is that we've become so good at a set series of modality. As soon as I tell someone to shift load away from the body, leave it there in a dead shift style format, and then go to pick it up again, they often find that they physically can't at certain weights because it's an extension and a compression, and they're having to rotate through the body to then pick it up. And arguably, that kind of is also very similar to how we move in life. Very rarely you're going to clean and press something to put it into the bin, right? You're going to pick it up, you're going to move it, you're going to crack on with your day. You don't have perfect form in every single movement that you do because you're not robots. So we also then think about when we get an athlete in who is sport specific, we're thinking about what are their movements, what are their everyday functionalities that they need for their sport. We now understand that, for example, rugby players are a really good example of this. Rugby players utilize warding, they utilize rotation, they utilize extension. All of that is something which they are continuously having to do during the game, and yet we haven't trained them in that discipline. We haven't trained them in that discipline of actually moving and being strong in those positions, whilst also potentially having a warding element. Warding element is an uneven style of pressure delivered in force against the body when in a balanced or braced position. So we're thinking about how can we incorporate that structure and style of training? Can we repeat it? Yes. Can we find progressions in it? Yes. And so by adding these structures in, suddenly the body becomes incredibly capable. I like to say that the body's really smart, stupid. I think Lewis probably heard me say that more times than I care to admit. But it's true, the body is smart, stupid. If we don't utilize and use something, and if we continually repeat something, the body gets very good at what is repeated. And so I did this amazing course, again, actually, speaking again about fascia, but an amazing course where I got to cut open 3 different cadavers. Horrible smell. We'll never forget it. That's not neither here nor there. We had an athlete, an everyday person, and a very, very obese person. And what was fascinating was once we'd, cut the skin, drain some of the fluid and the fat out of the way of the athlete, I could tell you what sport they played by looking at the lines of stress in their fascia. I'm hoping that we all understand what fascia is. I won't go into too much detail on it.
Can you explain it? Because
yeah. Okay, so if I was to drain the fat and the fluid out of the way, we would see what looked almost like a PVA glue type substance just under the skin. I'm sure most of you probably eat steaks. Sometimes you pull a steak apart, there's a little bit of filament that kind of looks like it's in between the steak. That is a really good example of a fascia lining or fascial bit. And if you were to look at the palm of your hand, you can see you've got these lines of stress, which is the way which your hand moves. Same is also very much true of what happens to fascia. Now, there's different types of fascia, and I won't jump into that right now. But what I'm specifically talking about is that stuff that is not intracellular, but is just under the skin surface. And if we were to pull that out and look at it and stretch it out over a table, again, wouldn't recommend doing it to yourselves. It's pretty life-threatening. You'll then see all these lines of stress. And what was wild was we could literally tell you what sport the athlete played because he'd repeated those lines of action consistently, time and time again. He had a long spiral up his arm, a high X and a low X across his body, and the same on his back. And his other arm looked like a spider's web of interconnectivity and more muscle tissue there as well. So instantly we could tell he's a single-sided sport. He's doing this kind of action consistently with his arm as a kind of a flicking motion. So we were able to find out he was a tennis player just by looking at the lines of stress in his body. Now, sidetrack to the obese person. When we drained all that stuff away, what was wild was we could see that the body had started to reject the fascia around his legs. He had gotten so fat and his body was going, right, well, you're not using your legs. So we're going to start to cut off the circulation to your legs. And it almost looked like someone had rolled the tissue around his hips. It started to actually collect and coagulate and get thick around his legs. And then the fascia on his legs was starting to really pull back. And it literally, I mean, besides all the tumors and all the other stuff that was starting to grow on his insides, you could also see that the lines of his body were very far and few between. And the ones that were there were thick and straight lined. And so why do I bring this up in the context of making you better athletes, a fat person and an athlete? Not saying you're either, but essentially what it does is it gives you a really clear understanding of what you repeat. The body creates this incredible pathway of action. And that is essentially all fascia is. It's that connective tissue that sends the signals, those electric signals from our brain, spine into our body. And so what I'm trying to get you to start to think of is, well, how do we train into that? How does that affect us? And can we get better and more cosmic at moving if we understand that as a principle? And then take that even further. As a coach, this should get you super pumped, because now you can think to yourself, right, someone comes in with an injury state and they're told that they can't do something again. Can we help them move in a certain way, even with an injury that they've been told means they can't do certain movements again? The reality is, yes, you can absolutely get these people to be creating different styles of pressure, get them to understand and create new pathways of activation by creating stress, by creating adequate movement. And suddenly, as a coach, this should really get you fired up, because it means that there's no more limitations around the things, except for just having the patience to structure beautiful programming around helping people understand pressure states in the body.
So what I want to bring this back to, because I know we've only got 30 more minutes, how do we as gym owners, including yourself, implement this level of coaching in a higher ticket structure to make our businesses more money? And how do you structure it right now in your gym? And also, if you could tell the guys a little bit about what your process was in terms of you starting your gym 12 months ago and implementing this into your existing business, and how they can think about doing this too.
Okay, absolutely. So all of this leads into the methodology of, and thank you for sticking with me through that absolute, ramble, let's call it. Hopefully it's still helpful to understand where my principles come from, and hopefully it will then help you understand the structure that I'm about to explain to you. So when I first took over Arete, it had some really bullshit standardized classes that we've all heard of. Am I going to get in trouble for saying the word body pump? Probably. I'll just do it anyway. So stuff like that, which was set. I can't stand stuff like that, because it's not good coaching. It's not getting to know people. It doesn't bring value, really. It just brings a herd and a certain type of person to your gym. And for me, that was not what I wanted for my studio. I wanted us to be known as a place for excellence in coaching. I wanted every single person who comes through my gym door to be affected in a positive way by coaching. So what I've set up, and the thing that really got my juices flowing, is thinking first of all about what's going to push the needle for really helping people through a coaching dynamic. Lots of people can't afford what essentially would be my services as a PT, but I can create a structure for 6 people in a room where I'm thinking of how I can, with great programming and understanding their mood. So that's the setting point. You're thinking to yourself, someone comes in, you need to assess them. You need to understand how they move. You need to understand what they want in a very specific level, and then how you can then push them into a structure that's going to get them what they want faster.
Guys, how many of you use an assessment when someone starts at your gym? Just throw in the chat a 1 if you use an assessment, and 2 if you don't use an assessment, because this would be a great starting point for someone walking through your doors to assess them and then give them a tiered approach to, okay, this is probably going to be the best program for you, or this more generic program is going to be more tailored to you. So what do you guys use? Do you guys use an assessment in your gyms at the minute? And maybe Ben can touch on that if not. So we use progressions from the day they start. Nice. Okay, cool. Who else? Does anyone else use an assessment in the gym? So Ryan, 2. So no, but we do have a mobility assessment with our mobility coach as an upsell. Okay, cool.
That's great.
Anyone else use an assessment at their gym? Or is everyone, and we do this at Hotbox, like we get people signed up and then we get them straight into the intro program. We don't use it as part of our like onboarding process, whereas Ben does. Whereas Ben has this as a way to determine whether they are a good fit for whatever level of program that they have. So over to Ben, how do you run your assessment, and what does that look like in terms of entering them then into the small group PT program, and a little bit of background and how you set this up?
Excellent. Yeah. So you, first of all, you understand what their goals are, and that's going to help you. So most people have done a consultation at this point, and they've told you what they want, and they've told you the structure which they want. Your job then is to find out how fast you can help them get to that with an anatomy mechanics assessment. So in that anatomy mechanics assessment, you're thinking about the movement of the spine, you're thinking about the pressure in the hips, the rotational ability, you're thinking about the flexion in the ankles and the knees, you're thinking about the alignment of the joints, the bones, and then you're also then thinking about thoracic rotation, you're thinking about flare in the ribs, you're thinking about rotation in the shoulders, and then you're thinking about pressure and ability in the neck. So that's how it, in a nutshell, that's what's involved in it. But then what that really clearly does is it sets you up to be like, right, okay, so arguably it's not a good idea to be throwing you into so much load so soon, because we first of all need to fix the shifts or the anti-rotation or even the mobility that we've just understood, or your range of motion, or whatever it is you discover in that discovery, in that assessment. It's then going to really clearly be able to help you to upsell the program and the style that you then need to provide for that person. So even though they've paid for small group personal training, that's going to provide to you what style of coaching they need to have at the forefront. So if they've got problems and issues, you need to focus and identify and fix that first, because then they're going to get results twice as fast, because you're not going to have to worry about injuring them. You're going to be able to have someone who cosmically moves well, adapts well, and has the structure in place. And then you can say, right, so realistically, you need to do more at the front end around movement and go to these workshops, which are specifically designed for newbies to understand the range of motion, the discovery of these things. And then you can then structure it to then they can then go into a different tier after a month or so of that training. Once they're ready, then you then say, right, so now you need to go into 2 times a week with also doing some yoga attached to it as well. You need to go into 3 times a week. And what that does is it just sets you up as being the voice of authority, and also sets you up for being able to very clearly outline the pathway of progression for each one of your clients. So it's consistently giving you the authority, and then it's your job to really make sure, based on their goals, in which direction the timeline is going and how to deliver that. It also then gives you a really clear modality of where you can take them afterwards. So once they're in that process, you go, right, you're absolutely smashing this, you're making it the way through. Let's now also start to understand the structure of what comes next and the service that we're going to provide for you laterally, or a progression up or a progression down.
Guys, feel free to ask in the chat. I've got a few questions for Ben. How does SGPT differ from our standard classes? So at Hotbox, for example, we have a maximum of 12 per class. So how is SGPT going to differ from our standard classes where we've got everyone possibly doing the same thing, obviously variations of it and scaling the different movements to fit that person? But how does it change, adding that extra tier in? What does that look like in difference from what we're already offering? Because I think a lot of these guys will be in that position.
For sure. Okay, that's a really great question. I'll try and highlight it as clear as I can without any visuals. So we also run classes which are external. Now, I would call these non-specific coached classes, because it's a set periodization, it's a set modality, it's a set workout. And then you're asking people to then perform that. That has no individualization into it at all. It has no real coaching elements attached to it that you can really get specific with it. And the reason why SGPT can be such a great tool, and for some of you it might not work because it's going to need more effort, It's going to need more specificity, and it's going to need more alignment to being able to coach someone and educate someone fast. And either you're regressing or progressing quickly in a smaller group format. But the idea is, what we're thinking of is, how can I offer a better, more intensive service than just the generalization of somebody standing and observing and maybe offering a bit of support here and there? We're thinking, how can I bring high value education to no more than 6 people? We've got it absolutely dialed in for 6. You can do less at the start to build confidence. But what you're thinking is I can then do specific programming, and I can structure it based on time and based on good programming around time. So I can have somebody in recovery in one group, I can have somebody doing strength in one group, and I can have somebody doing a transformation in one group. And what we do is we understand what are the metrics that we need to be doing in this structure, utilizing time, not reps, which I could probably go into a whole nother talk about the understanding of utilizing time instead of just reps, pressure, muscle pressure, and also range of motion and full range and then partial range as well. I won't go into that because I think that's probably going to take too much of your time. But essentially what you're thinking is better understanding of coaching and being more direct and being able to deliver a higher tier service. And then let's take CrossFit as an example, because I think this is very useful. Let's say if I was to structure Hotbox, and I think that's helpful if I think of me putting this structure into Hotbox. Let's say you run a survey to all of your people and you go, right, so I'm running a survey and I want to see what's the general consensus of people in here, what's the thing which they want to learn more about. And then you ask them 3 questions. You ask them, do they want to understand and get better at mobilizing and feeling better in their body? Are they in pain? Do they want to fix that? All of that into one nutshell. Then the secondary one, which I would suggest, which is going to be really useful to you, do you want something sports specific? Is there something which is a modality based on something very specific that you want to be aligning to, which is a key lift or something that you want more training and more focus on? Then that's your second group. Your third group, do you want something around nutrition? Do you want something a little bit more dialed in and giving you a bit more specificity to understand how to get in better shape, or something around and utilizing nutrition and a training program, which is a lot more specific? Throw those questions into your groups. That's going to give you your first structure for your SGPT, because now you've got several different classes you can be running which have that specificity. And then what you can say is, great, so there's a group of you here who say you want that. What we're going to do is we're going to laterally think about using this as a completely separate tool now. This tool is now something you're going to be able to have access to. You're going to be able to do, and this period for a period of time. Let's say the injury protocol only lasts 2 months. And then at the end of the 2 months, oh, you guys did so well on this. We're actually going to shift you up into sport specific now because your range of motion is absolutely awesome. And we're going to double down on coaching you the specificity of a clean and jerk example. Then at the back end of that, you guys, oh, you've done so well at that. It's actually getting pretty close to summer now. Why don't we just get you absolutely diced so you look amazing for that trip that you're going on that you told us about? And there you see, now you've got a whole year or of training for somebody where you're getting them specifically into the mindset of you're adding value into their structure. So they can also, at any point, they can choose to tear down and go back into your awesome set programs and set larger classes, because they're still going to enjoy those. You can even offer a hybrid model. So you've got to start thinking about, can I add more influence? Can I add a greater package for these people? And is it going to be strenuous on you? The answer is, at the front end, the learning phase of this and getting this to work and proving the modality of it is going to feel tough at first. But once you get into your element, most of you got into this because you absolutely, or you should, absolutely love coaching. And this should be a huge joy for you to think of, how can I be more involved in the outcomes and the helping of these people to achieve their goals? So suddenly you've got all this fantastic ability to delve deeper with people for an isolated period of time or a much longer period of time. And then you're imparting your knowledge, you're growing and you're expanding with these people, and you're providing them some absolute core knowledge and access to the stuff that really makes you a fantastic coach. Rather than trying to appease to the masses, you can get specific. You can really dial it in, and then you can then absolutely find way, which I have, of utilizing time and utilizing things in a structure of time rather than having a set program on the wall.
Yeah, I love what you said there about sending out a survey to your members
Oh yeah.
and asking them, hey, what are the top 3 things, or what do you want help with? Is it weightlifting? Is it to look better? Is it around nutrition? Is it around recovery? And then using their answers to then decide, okay, we can now create a 4, 6, 8 week program that we're going to specialize in that thing. And we're going to charge a higher ticket for it, and we're going to have it as a smaller group. And they've told you what they want, so you've almost got the market data then to advertise that, and then push that as a SGPT or specialized program, and use that as a way to increase your value per member.
They already trust you. They are already they're in your cult. They know and love what you're doing already. So actually, arguably, selling to people who already believe and trust you shouldn't be a hard thing, especially because it's coming from a place of helping them and making them better. I always talk about this to my coaches, which is, there's the problems, you're the solution. So suddenly you now have a series of people who are noticing that they have a series of issues that they're experiencing in the class, or there's certain movements they just can't quite get past. Great. You have the solutions. You know, if someone was to pull you to the side, you'd maybe have a few minutes to do that with them. Imagine how much more of a service you're going to be able to provide to those people by being able to utilize your skill set on more of an individual level. And then take it even further. Then start to think about also what a VIP module looks like. And instead of ever having to disclaim that, that is something which you can then have in your back pocket for somebody who's like, let's take an example of somebody who goes, I'm going to go to the CrossFit Games. And you're like, unlikely for some people, but there is every now and again going to be someone who does that. And you're like, I could be a coach for a CrossFit Games athlete. What does a VIP module look like for that person? How much of my time am I willing to invest in this person in order to help them do that? And then charge them for it, because you are the solution. You have the answers. And hopefully this is getting you excited to think about just lateral thinking to your business, rather than thinking of the struggle of having a consistent flow of just a set modality class that everyone has to follow that's on a whiteboard. Instead, you're now thinking, can I get more specific? Can I get really into the detail of what these people want and how I can help them? And can I market that consistently, externally and internally? Fuck yes.
So pricing wise,
Yeah.
what do you currently do within your gym, which is very close to Ryan's gym? So it'd be really useful for Ryan to understand, and the other gyms in London who are on this call, like, what do you charge in London? I know you're very central, obviously, but just so the guys understand, what is your price to just do the regular classes and be involved in the normal gym? And then what do you charge for your small group PT? How many sessions is that? How do you deliver that? How do you upsell it? What are the different options? How does that work?
So standardized programming, so the classes that are set, comes with their gym membership, which is about £120. So that comes with their gym membership. There's an AROX class, which is a bastardization of HYROX. We've got a workout of the week, or WOW, which we do. And then we've also got a sprint style session. So what that, and a strength workshop that we do every weekend as well. So we've crossed all the boundaries of different styles of training. We've got endurance, we've got strength, we've got cardiovascular and VO2 max training, and then we've also got the high endurance hybrid athlete style training. And then if they want something specific, something coached, it's the first thing that they say when they come into our gym: are you looking for a coached service, or are you looking for access to a great gym? If they say they want a coach service, then we understand what they want and we provide and deliver that to them on a several type of structure. If it's somebody who's just wanting to experience it, we only ever offer a once a week format for a month. So they can come and they can try once a week for a month with a little bit of understanding of what the programming will look like. And then we do not offer that again, because it is about either getting them into doing 2, 3, or 4 sessions. And that structure is then only supposed to be a couple of, what we say is we can laterally add this onto your account. So it only comes to about £140. So it's 20 quid extra. That's it. So they're just paying £20 extra rather than 120 and 140. We just say, just pay the £20 extra. And then you can have access to that single session a week. What we then do is, the idea is to move them directly into 2, 3, or 4. Then we're looking at about 280 for just the 2 sessions. That does not include nutrition. That does not get them access to a nutritional coach. but it does start to instigate a couple of ideas around nutrition for them. Then what we do is we've got access to our next tier up, which is the 3 tier, which is where people take it a little bit more seriously. That kind of gives them access to nutrition and a bit more access in general. That comes to about $399, and then the 4 times a week is $499. So we're kind of moving in about hundreds for each different monthly payment. Now, forget I've said all of that, because the best way to mass get people into this is to think of it as, can I get them into some sort of challenge where I'm going to absolutely show huge value of my skill set, align it to their goals, make it feel intensive, and give them everything at value, so full access to everything that we offer at the front end, and then get them to purchase into the tiered system I've just said. That is a much greater yield of structure to get a much more higher quality client in through the door at the start. So I do group setting calls where I say to them, we're going to do a 6-week challenge, and it's supposed to be intensive, but it's around those 3 questions which I mentioned before, which were around either it's pain or it's strengths or sport specific, or it's around fat loss and transformation. Then once I know what field they're in, then we program and help them with that. We focus on the intensity of it for that 6 weeks. And then what I'm doing is at the 3-week mark, I'm upselling them into a 6 or a 12-month contract, because at that point they should be getting some pretty amazing results. And what we then do is we get them to double down, and we offer them an amazing deal where they can take that price that they've paid, which is £600 off the initial price of it is £600. They can then take that off every month that they choose to stay. So if they do a 6 months, they essentially get £100 off a month. If they do the 12 months, they essentially get £50 off a month.
I think one of the biggest questions I've got, and please guys, raise your hand if you've got any questions. But for me is, how do we make it so different from the existing membership? So we have one set membership which gets you access to all the general classes. How do we really differentiate that and say, look, this is a level above, this is completely different? Because we said, okay, 6 per class, we have 12 in a class. Well, let's say some of the classes aren't that busy, say there's a smaller class. Are they essentially getting an SGPT model if only half the people turn up? And how is it different?
So you've got to think of it, instead of the structure which you've just said of being one or nothing, instead it's a different tool. It's a different service that you're providing. It is far more expansive. It's far more involved. It's far more individual. So you are specifically creating a program for them that is for them specifically. So they will know, they will come in and they will have their program on their phone, and they will know what they're supposed to be doing. There might be some changes in abbreviation to that, but essentially they're going to come in with the knowledge of what they should be doing.
So it's completely separate per person. So it's not a, hey guys, we're doing this is the SGPT. It's, we've got Ben, you're working on this thing. We've got Sally, you're working on this thing.
And Lewis, what that does is that massively opens you up to not just have one set of thing that person's doing. So then you can have somebody doing full body push, you can have somebody doing full body pull, you can have somebody doing sport specific, site specific, injury movements, because you're utilizing time and you're teaching your coaches how to utilize a time structure for the movement rather than a rep or a set modality or an AMRAP. You're giving a time structure and you're teaching them what time means in variability of strength, hypertrophy, and endurance.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. Do you guys have any questions for Ben regarding how he sets up his SGPT system and how he runs it? Tania.
Hi, Tania. Hit me with your question.
Hi, sorry, I'm on the school run as well whilst I'm listening, but I really didn't want to miss it. My question is, so because mine's a dance studio, we obviously have the standard classes and people pay for the membership to attend their standard scheduled classes. Nice. Then we've got the option to have one-to-ones as well.
Nice.
This may work really well. I've never thought of this before, the way that you've kind of structured it. And I'm thinking like doing a specific class, because alignment, ligaments, joints, hip flexors, that kind of thing is all really important for us. Would it work to kind of do a separate specific class based on maybe splits or on your kicks or on your pirouettes? Would that kind of thing work? So you're doing it individually for each child,
Oh my God, just
Um,
imagine the joy that you would get if you were able to go to people and say, like, your kid is absolutely smashing it. I'd really like to put them into an advanced group setting where they're going to go through some really.
Parents would eat that up, wouldn't they?
Oh, are you joking? Someone's going, my child's amazing. I would absolutely,
But
I would.
how do you sell that separately to the private lessons? Would you do that with the pricing structure, or how would that be dealt with differently?
Nice. Okay, so let's first of all, let's just think actually for a minute. Imagine if you were able to take that situation where you've got that parent, they've got that issue, or you've got that person wanting to get them into this class group. What you would say is, I'm taking on the kids who are give them the option to upskill. And what you say is, it's going to be a more intensive process. They're going to have to come minimum 3 times a week to see me, which means that you're upselling them to do more with them. You're essentially also instigating a greater yield of passion for the movement. And so what you're saying is, what I want to do is I want to spend more time with your kid. I'm going to spend more time with your dance crew or whoever it is you're serving. And then you say, but what's going to be great is it's going to be slightly more affordable than doing this one-to-one, because they're going to be in a setting, because they're going to be learning such high skills, such high rate of effort. I'm actually going to be able to charge essentially what will be 40 quid per child, which means that you don't have to pay my usual price for my one-to-ones, which is £200. Make sense? Alistair.
I think you might be on mute.
Sorry, I just said thank you very much, and how perfect it sounded.
And then also imagine if you flip it on its head. Imagine if you've got a bunch of kids who don't move as well, and instead you're like, I'd like to really. You say to them, look, they clearly love this. They are clearly not a natural mover. I'd really like to spend a month specifically getting them to mobilize better, getting them to get the
I love this.
because then you can tier it absolutely as being like, this is a fantastic thing that we can utilize to help your child move better, feel better, or person move better and feel better. So we're going to specifically spend a month, 2 months, 8 weeks, whatever it is, and the whole point is that it's a really easy to see tangible metric. They're going to move better, feel better, get more coordination, which then we can then advance them into the advanced class.
I love that. Amazing. I've never thought of this, so thank you.
No, honestly, it's such an easy way to utilize and to help people to essentially create more business just by thinking laterally and just by solving the problems that are there. You've got these series of issues and problems, and now you are the solution. And of course, you don't need me to tell you how to do this. You already know what the answers are. You already have them. You're a great coach. You're on this course because you're thinking to yourself how I can improve and have another revenue stream, utilizing the skills I have rather than learning some bullshit side hustle you're never going to use. Use what you have and understand how to do that to create more revenue, and then teach someone else how to do it as well, so you can start to step away from it and enjoy the spoils of your business.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you.
Jamie, you got your hand up. Go.
Yeah. So you've mentioned about obviously the initial group call, and everyone on here is working with Lewis and implementing similar systems with the eight session beginners program.
Yeah.
Obviously, my head's now going. We don't. Yeah, everyone's on here because they're time poor. Like similar situation to where you were. So utilizing that 8 weeks and alongside the resources that within the coaching teams that we already have. So, for example, like we've got someone who's going through. I'm sure you're aware of Ash Grossman's movement mechanics course, mentorship.
Yeah.
Yeah, so someone going through that, one of our coaches is pre and postnatal menopause specialist, and someone going through precision nutrition level 1. So within that 8 sessions, we're already sort of scanning and picking people's brains to upsell them not only on the membership, but then into these small group training sessions that we can start to deliver off the back. So you're not even. I'm just thinking about how we market this without impacting our core offering. Because a lot of the marketing algorithms that
have your answer already, really, if you think about it, because you've got these fantastic things that are coming. So instead of it impacting your core offering that you've got at the moment, instead what you're thinking about is you're layering these things on as amazing new things for people to get excited about. So instead of like, yes, we offer these aspects of it, but if you really want to get to the nitty gritty of it, we can get really specific. So you're taking this structure and you're going to get a taste. You're going to have some of it in this amazing core offering that we have. You're going to get some of the aspects of it. You're going to come to these workshops that we do. So you know how fucking high value we are, because we really care. You've got someone doing postpartum. You've got someone doing nutrition. You've got someone doing movement. You guys give a shit. Okay. Now what you've got to do is you've got to be like, right, now let's get really specific. You can join into this and have complete specificity of field with these guys who have learned this skill set. So rather than it being a little bit general, let's get nitty gritty in the specifics, and let's create a course which really reflects the individual's talent of their coaching prowess and ability. That is absolutely something you can market. You have the answer. What you're thinking of is it going to detract from what you've got? Absolutely not. It's going to add. That's another thing that you can put in, where you just need to get hyped and get them hyped in a way that they can then feel like it's something which they want to invest in, because it's a solution. They've got the problems. They're going to come to you and be like, I'm struggling with this. Fantastic. Here is the solution. Let's now find a way to get you over the line. And remember, people are always holding back based on either fear or finance. Yeah. And there's answers to both of those when you're coming into the selling structure. And it always comes to the point is, do you trust me? If not, let's keep asking me questions until you know that I have the answer for you and that I am the solution. And you have to be steadfast in that. You cannot waver on that at all. Because if you do, the reality is that they're just not going to trust you on anything. They might enjoy one aspect of what you do. You have to make sure that you are, and it sounds like you've already got it. You've got people specializing in this stuff. That is the answer. Getting specific with it and creating a profile for that is going to absolutely smash it. So that's awesome that you're doing and investing in your people like that, by the way. Well done.
How would you, thank you. How would you, in those, would you run like blocks of initiate and bring people in same as a beginner's course, or would you just run that as a, do you feel like that'd be something you'd run as a continuous program where people can literally upgrade a membership into that? Or
one, you're not going to always need postpartum. So I think that one speaks for itself. Obviously won't belie or belittle you with that. That obviously is one that has a ceiling to it, but absolutely you can shuttle it in as being, where nutrition is concerned, there's the bulk, there's the cut, there's the greater yield of organic profile, there's understanding utilizing bloods and hormones and peptide usage in order to help somebody with their metric of understanding with nutrition. There's gut rehabilitation. Gosh, I could talk about this for days. There's so much scope there. And then with sports specific, in stretch, movement, especially where your movement instructor's course, there's so much you can take from that. Injury prevention, injury recovery, movement, range of motion discovery. There in itself, you could create, we could create a whole mesocycle, a year's worth of training style where people can come in at intervals or be like, yeah, I mean, last year I did that and it really helped me understand these movement structures for myself, which then meant I was able to do better. I feel like I've been missing that at the moment. Let me re-go into that course. Or do you know what? I need to have 2 times a week where I'm focusing and someone's telling me how to mobilize, because if I just know that I'm not going to go home and do that homework because I'm so busy, I'd rather go to a facility where someone tells me what to do. And then again, you're just thinking about solutions, problems. Here are the solutions for that person. And the more you get to understand where the character who enters the room, your client's profile, the more you can answer these. So the more you structure every single person's journey that enters into the room, you're going to have the answers because you've already set up an amazing group of coaches who have the solutions for them.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I think just to add to Jamie's point there, how I see it is definitely a tiered system. So it's not an either or. Like, we're getting them through the door, we're getting them onto this intro program, and just having it as an upsell, having it as an extra, because you, like Ben says, you've got them in front of you, they trust you, you're delivering an exceptional service. I definitely wouldn't see it as like we're delivering too much, and then it's like, well, we're stuck on this program. I only see that as a positive to be able to upsell them into the next tier or higher tier. One thing that I do want to touch on, Tania, you still got your hand up. Do you want to ask a question? No, cool. So one thing that we're going to be doing at Hotbox and what Ben's running on, I've got the date written down, Saturday, the 21st of February. Ben is going to be delivering a seminar on basically how to actually run this as a program, but also a methodology, like how Ben runs it in his gym. Because I've been to a couple of his sessions. It's very different to any class or PT I've been to before. It's very much time-based rather than reps-based, which is very different to what I've normally seen. But essentially, like, how can we differentiate ourselves? Like Jamie's saying there, we've got our coaches with these better qualifications and more speciality towards the different things, that different strings to our bow. And so I want to do that for Hotbox, and I want to upskill our coaches. And Ben's going to be delivering this seminar on the 21st of February in London at his gym, and he has very kindly offered everyone on this course in Gym Grow £150 discount. So it should be £450 a ticket, and we're getting it for £300 a ticket. And it's going to be very focused around coaching. I'll pass over to Ben so he can explain a little bit more about what that looks like.
Yeah, I think at its core, what I've done lots of these talks and seminars now for gyms, and I'm usually brought in to help restructure a gym from the inside out to earn more money, but also to understand where the holes and pitfalls might be in the structure that you have now. And this is something that I have found has been, astronomical in terms of the growth, because what it does is it leans really well into what you guys specialize in and what makes you very special to you. So you'll hear me talking a lot about this is a great opportunity to double down on a USP rather than a generalization of your USP. So your unique selling point, how to double down on that. And then what this does is it gives you the opportunity to have a tool system that works, and it gives you that driving force and that access to be able to give to people of a system that works straight away. But what I also do is I very clearly highlight how you can restructure it for what works for you. So not only am I going to show you a way that is proven in both of the facilities that I own and have had, but specifically how you can then manipulate, manage it, and come up with ways to better it for your own skill set. And what I'll do is I'll clearly outline and show that to you in the structured format. And then I'm basically gifting you this structure, which usually if you were to download my course is like $5,000. So essentially what you're getting is access to that over the day. So come with a book, come ready to learn. And in that structure, what I'm going to very clearly show to you is how you can have access to the system. And we'll go through some examples of your companies and come up with them together. And then you can take that and put that straight into your business and start earning north of 30K a month just from this central side hustle that you've got, just by understanding how to better utilize that as a selling structure as well. And we'll also go into a little bit about how to sell it, as I think that for some of you is probably going to be very, very useful, but also I think it will then also help align to how you don't lose what is your authority in your space as it is, and make people feel like, oh, it's just a hack. You're just selling the same thing for a different structure. No, this is a completely different tool set. And what you're actually providing is something of massive value and something that really is solution based.
So just to touch base on that, it is going to be deep into the training methodology, right?
Yeah, the coaching aspect of it. Yeah. So it'll also be something which you can coach to your coaches. I would also recommend you bring your coaches to it if you can, because it's something which we are going to have a practical element to it. We are going to be able to show you that. And I'm also going to chuck in as an added extra the assessment protocol as well, so that you guys can really start to understand what the whole of the flow of the system can look like as a structure for your gyms.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely love it. That's so good. Yeah, so guys, me and the Hotbox team are going to be there. Obviously, it'd be great for as many of you to be involved with that as possible. We can also set up like maybe a Gym Grow meal and stuff afterwards. I'll send everyone an email with all the details regarding that after this call for those that are interested, and we'll send this out to everyone. And then also, I want to touch base on the Tenerife Top Training weekend. So for those of you that voted in the poll, the best dates, we've set a bit more time aside for it. It's going to be the Thursday, the 2nd of April till Monday, the 6th of April. And we're going to have Ben there involved massively with the actual coaching aspect of it, and upskilling ourselves, one as business owners, yes, but also massively as how do we improve our coaching ability? Because For me, we are in the business of coaching, and ultimately we need to be elite and experts at that thing. So there'll also be an email dropping for that event, and I'm just going to let Ben talk.
Yeah, I also want to really touch on the fact that the way I've structured that specific one is also delving into who you are specifically and giving you some one-on-one time with me to help you structure something very specifically to you and to your company and your coaches. So what I also want you to think of is this isn't just going to be just a group format style thing. I'm also going to give you guys individual time with myself to go over your company specifically and your coaching specifically and come up with some more methodologies and some stuff which I think might add massive value. Don't think no will add massive value into your products, and also kind of come up with a couple of other, maybe something which makes you feel a bit uncomfortable, but some products you might not necessarily think about having, but I can guarantee that your customers will want to spend money on. And that kind of thinking, I think, is just going to allow you to really start to open up the revenue stream into your businesses. And I want to gift that time to you so we can get really specific. So don't worry if you're not just a gym, if you're a studio, or even if you're a consultancy company or whatever it is, I absolutely have a structure that works given whatever you need.
Awesome. Do you guys have any further questions on any of that?
I had one around, and it could be for anyone on the call, really, if they do this type of thing already. Payment, or not payment, but pricing in terms, not the actual price you charge, but more what you give your coaches. So Jamie mentioned he's got some guys specializing in, I think, nutrition, movement, etc. And I guess they would do the bulk of the work to come up with the program or whatever it is. How do you currently pay them like the right amount, because they're doing a lot of the work, but also obviously take a cut for your business? Basically, yeah.
Two-pronged question there, I think. And I'm going to jump into this, and then I think probably maybe Jamie can also jump into this because his structure might be different to what I'm about to suggest. I massively incentivize my coaches, but then I also expect my coaches to be at such a high standard where they're consistently learning and consistently getting into their ability. So I overpay my coaches deliberately, but that's also because I have a pay structure in place for the gym as a whole, where I know that I have a consistent cash cow, which is the main gym access. So I know that my gym is always earning 60 grand. And then anything else that we do on top of that is a bonus. And so I pay my coaches what essentially would be 40 quid per hour for that session which they're coaching. And then if they do any of the VIP work, they get paid £60 per hour for that. And then I take 40. So that's about £100 an hour, which that person is essentially paying for. If you're looking at something site specific and you want to help that person have access to the nutritional side, my advice is what's the level of work which they're doing. You need to be able to quantify, and you need to be able to have a standard operating procedure in place where you're able to make sure that they are hitting certain deliverables. Because in the past, what I've had with nutritional coaches is you give them a loose structure and they really, really just kind of run with that, and they don't get the specificity and they don't get the results. So I would flip it on its head and I would say, you've got to work out for you specifically what you can tangibly have as a metric to show that they're doing well. And then you reward them for that, what you would essentially deem as what that is as their work being excellent. Reward them for that if they do over the time. Reward them for that if they get the results, because that's going to add massive value to your company. And then as a payment split or as a structure, it's got to be based on their time. And then you've got to ask yourself, how much of an influence is it you having provided them that person? And you then have to think about the number that you're happy with, which you're then able to provide to them based on what you think you need to get back, because you are providing them with a lot. You're providing them with people, a place to work, you're providing them with access to you and your knowledge, and also to be a part of a team, and also the way you're growing, which means that in the future, they could also be expanding. So then what I would suggest is a tier system of payment. You start them at lower. They work at, in my gym, it's tier 3, tier 2, and tier 1. Tier 1 is the best tier because you always want to be first. And you're thinking that that's where they can earn a lot of money. They also then are in charge of a team. They have people and roles and responsibilities they need to be able to be hitting on and working into. Tier 2, less responsibility than Tier 1, but it's at the starting point of them learning how to structure and to be a part of providing more of a service in gym. And Tier 3 is an hour-by-hour payment structure and is the lowest tier that we have. But every single person who comes through my door should be thinking to themselves that they want to get into a higher tier structure. Make sense?
Yeah.
Jamie, what do you do for you? Jamie.
So ours is slightly different because we haven't changed our payment tiers since my other half, Mary, and I bought into the business. So any additional revenue PTs or coaches earn goes directly to them.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
So any one-to-one coaching, anything like that, if they want to run a workshop, then it's an 80-20% split. So it's an incentive. They incentivize them to bring in more revenue. Just from a point of fact that our hourly pay isn't as good as it isn't where I want it to be. So we try and support them in as many other ways as possible that's of minimal financial impact to the business.
That's really strong. To be honest, Jamie, that's really fucking strong. Because you're incentivizing them to do better, and they're going to really want to stay a part of you and your system because you're trusting them and aligning to what they're really good at. So I think that's honestly, that's a really, really good idea. My one thing is, how do you progress that? How do you incentivize them more than the incentivization that you've just given them?
The only other way is that we're looking at our CPD structure as well. So it's stuff that we can provide them as a business. It is something I fully intend to review.
Nice.
But yeah,
dude, that's awesome.
It's just where we are. Again, purely from a business point of view, we weren't able to pay. We can't pay anything more than we can, or we couldn't a little while ago. We're in a different position now, but it's the same position a lot of the guys on the call are in.
So once you have more leverage, in other words, more money and more clients, then you'll be able to maybe start to play around with what the structure looks like a bit better, because you won't be coming from a place of scarcity. You'll be coming from a place of plenty. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, perfect. And that's the right way to do it, by the way, because you don't want to be in a position where you're over promising to coaches and then under delivering, because that just massively brings down your authority. So you're doing the right thing, because until you're in a position where you can be plentiful and you can then provide greater yield, greater service, greater aspects and greater teamwork, you then have to always bring it back to the fact that you physically can't afford that yet. So incentivizing them by them having the authority in that sense is awesome. I always say people first, mission always. The reality is that you're always bringing it back to the people in your group and you're thinking how you can serve them. But if the reality is that it's going to override the missions aspect of what you're trying to deliver, then the reality is you have to stay in your scope of what you can provide, and you have to keep to the mission statement. Make sense?
Yeah.
Nice.
Perfect. Cheers, man.
I think we're in a similar position at the moment. I offer, if they do PTs, our coaches, they can take all that. They charge what they want. We've got a general consensus what they should charge. So all coaches are similar if they're doing it within E1, but they take all that money, because similar to Jamie, I'd like to be able to pay them a little bit more as their base rate.
Nice.
So for now, until we grow further and further, for now they take 100% for PTs. Then I was just trying to think what, if we're providing say 6 small group PT, they try and maybe a bit of a split, whatever it's 80-20, 70, whatever. But that puts them in control, so I don't have to. Then it's kind of up to them to deliver that value.
It increases, guys. As long as the quality increases and you set, what you've got to do is you've got to put into standard operating procedures all of this, so that there's no gray area between you and the coaches. It has to be something that you both agree to and that you hold them to no matter what. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to be providing something and then the standards start to slip, because then that looks bad on you and your company, and you've trusted that person and he's like, well, I don't really need to try very much because they're just going to pay me 70% split anyway. What I would then say is, like, really make it clear what that structure looks like. Demand more from them because you are giving them such a high percentage rate, and then talk to them about how you want to incentivize them based on a rewards basis of how well they do. So you can get bonus if you get X people over the line, because then what you're then doing is you're also massively incentivizing them to do the job well and to continue to do the job well. And then also let them know the direction which you want to take it. So I want to pay you guys more in general for the next stages of this corporation and this us working together. And I want us to be in a position where I'm paying you more for all aspects of your coaching prowess. But I also, in order to do that, we need to hit certain markers. We need to get the results so we can market it, so I can market you. And again, then it becomes a collaboration. And that's where the magic really starts to happen, is you start to think about everything as a collaborative experience and about the team influencing the team.
Nice. Awesome, guys. Hopefully everyone found this really beneficial. I definitely did. Saturday the 21st, I'll send out an email off the back of this call. If anyone is interested in that seminar day with Ben, breaking down his small group PT methodology and how to implement that and upskilling yourself as a coach. And I'll also drop an email around Tenerife top training. So watch out for that as well. Cheers, guys. We'll catch you on Thursday next week.